Today, we are diving deep into Franz Kafka's 1915 masterpiece, The Metamorphosis. Now, it's a story that kicks off with one of the most famous opening lines in all of literature, but what it's really about is something deeply and uncomfortably human. It asks a terrifying question. What happens when our value to others is suddenly completely erased? So let's just get right to the heart of it, shall we? This is not just some fantasy story about a guy turning into a bug. No way. It's this powerful, stark metaphor for how our ability to work, to earn money, can get so tangled up in our own identity that without it, we risk becoming totally unrecognizable, not just to the people around us, but maybe even to ourselves. To really get the full horror of the transformation, we have to first understand the quiet, grinding horror of the life that came before it. So let's meet our protagonist, Gregor Samsa. Just look at this list. It really shows you how Gregor was trapped long before he ever had an exoskeleton. He's a traveling salesman in a job he absolutely despises, working himself to the bone, not for his own dreams, but to pay off his parents' debt. He's the engine of the family, right? Their only source of income. His entire existence, every single waking moment, is just measured by how useful he is to them. And this comparison here, wow, it just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got his actual humanity, all his anxiety, his silent frustrations, his own needs that are constantly, always pushed aside. And on the other side, you've got how his family sees him as a financial asset, a provider, a debt repayment machine. You could argue that dehumanization started long before he woke up as an insect. His voice was already unheard. So that sets the stage for the moment, everything just completely and utterly changes. The big event in the story isn't just a plot device. It's the physical manifestation of his internal reality. And there it is, one of the most jarring and unforgettable sentences ever written. There's no explanation, no warning, just this simple, absurd, grotesque fact. Gregor Samsa, the good son, the provider, is now a monstrous bug. And what's his first thought? Not terror, not what happened to me, but how he's going to be late for work. That tells you everything you need to know about the prison his life had already become. Okay, let's really dig into this, because this is the absolute core of this story. The insect form is a symbol for the sudden, total loss of his utility. He can't work, he can't provide, he can't be the person his family relies on. And by stripping that away, Kafka exposes the raw, transactional nature of his relationships. It forces all of us to ask, who is Gregor when he's no longer useful? So how do they answer that question? Well, it unfolds through the family's reaction. And let me tell you, their response is this slow, heartbreaking journey from shock and maybe a tiny sliver of compassion to outright disgust and contempt. In the beginning, there's this little glimmer of hope. His sister, Greet, she actually takes it upon herself to care for him. She brings him food. She's even testing different scraps to see what his new bug form might like, and she cleans his room. For a very brief period, she is his one and only connection to the family, his only acknowledgement as something other than a monster. But that compassion has a very short shelf life. If you trace this decay, you can see how that initial shock quickly sours into resentment as the money gets tight. Gregor the asset has become Gregor the liability. And that leads to his total isolation. He's not a family member anymore, just a shameful secret. And it all leads to that final, chilling decision. He's a burden that has to be removed. So what fuels this complete 180? Well, it's this toxic mix of pressures. First and foremost, money, the financial strain. Without Gregor's income, everybody else has to get a job. Then there's this desperate desire for normalcy. His presence is this constant, grotesque reminder of their bizarre reality. And that gets even worse when they take on lodgers to make ends meet, which basically turns Gregor into a direct threat to their new income. But really, at the end of the day, it's the sheer shame of his monstrous form that seals his fate. And this leads us right to the terrifying question at the absolute heart of the story. It's a question the Samsa family answers with their actions. When someone can no longer fulfill their role, can no longer contribute in the way we expect them to, do we still see their humanity? Or do they become something else, an inconvenience, a problem that just needs to be solved? And the final nail in the coffin comes from the one person who showed him any kindness, Grit. After Grigor accidentally reveals himself to the lodgers and shatters the family's fragile normalcy, she is the one who says they have to get rid of him. And she doesn't even call him Grigor anymore. She calls him It. The dehumanization is complete, and it's spoken by his former protector. This final, brutal rejection leads directly to the story's tragic ending. But the way Kafka presents Gregor's death, and especially the family's reaction to it, is, well, it's truly chilling. So after overhearing his family say he has to go, Gregor doesn't feel anger or bitterness. Instead, he feels this overwhelming wave of love for them, and he realizes his very existence is their burden. He retreats to his room and just dies right as the sun comes up. In a strange, tragic way, his last act is one of utility, removing himself to free his family. It is his final, quiet, selfless act. And this is where the story lands its final, most brutal punch. The family's transformation is the complete mirror image of Gregor's. When they find his body, there's no mourning. There is relief. A huge weight has been lifted. They are suddenly filled with optimism, and they take the day off to go for a walk in the country. They immediately start planning their future, a new apartment, marriage prospects for great. Gregor is forgotten almost instantly. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Kafka's ending isn't just dark for the sake of being dark. It's the terrifyingly logical conclusion of his premise. The story shows with ice-cold precision that in a system, whether it's a family or an entire society, that values utility above everything else, a person's worth is conditional. And once that utility is gone, the person themselves can be thrown away and forgotten with absolutely alarming ease. And that leaves us with one final haunting question. The story of Gregor Samsa really forces us to look at our own lives, our own relationships, and ask ourselves, if you were stripped of your job, your role, your ability to contribute in the ways people expect, what would be left? Who are you really without your utility?